Good morning and welcome to my channel. It's about 8:15 in the morning here in New York City. What time is it in your neck of the woods? And what's the weather like? It's a nice day, a little breeze here. And so this video is being done by request, a woman named April from Sydney, Australia. And we're going to talk about why family members tend to exclude, criticize, gossip, or gaslight family members who point out toxic family behavior. So if you've ever been in a situation where you have pointed something out that's toxic, maybe your sister is fiercely competitive to the point where it is unhealthy. Maybe your older brother constantly puts you down and one-ups you. Maybe you're dealing with a narcissistic parent. Maybe you were in a situation where you were abused and you have spoken out about it, and now you feel like your family has turned against you. They might not have said it out loud, but you sense it in their interactions because they no longer invite you to gatherings. They no longer include you in important decisions. So you sense that you were being erased or excluded from the family. Or maybe they outright said it to you. It's going to be different with each family. But this is a big question, like why do family members tend to exclude, criticize, gossip, and gaslight individuals within that family that point out toxic family dynamics? And so, society kind of pushes this narrative and teaches us that families are everything. And that is amazing and wonderful if you are blessed with a healthy family, right? Because a healthy family allows you to have family support, allows you to have a safe landing to fall. And so that is the goal, that is the hope. But it's not like that for every family. So it's important to acknowledge that. There are some people that are blessed with healthy families where support is plentiful, but there are also a lot of people that don't have that. And for those who come from families where there's a lot of toxicity there and they treat each other terrible and behave in unloving ways, it can be very heartbreaking. And it's easy to buy into the belief that every family sticks together, supports each other, and is loving towards each other, like the families that many of us grew up watching on television, right? You're watching these sitcoms where at the end of the sitcom, the family has each other's back. The family's supportive. The family's loving towards each other. And when you're watching this on TV or you're seeing people's photographs of their family and hearing about their stories on social media, or you're just around friends who have that support and you don't, it's easy to feel very, very, very discouraged and disheartened. And so when it feels like your family plays favorites or excludes you from gatherings and get-togethers, or they're clicked up, there's cliques within the family, or that their behavior is just so toxic that you can't be around each other for more than 5 minutes without arguing, it can be painful and it can be traumatic. And you might even be struggling with questions like, why do I feel stressed and triggered whenever I'm around my family? What is wrong with me? I want you to know you are not alone in this scenario. That's the first thing. Just take comfort in knowing you are not alone. But what happens is, because this narrative is pushed, especially here in America, that at the end of the day, family always sticks together. And that is the goal. That is the hope. That's what we would like. But what happens if that's not your story? What happens if that's not your reality? And so what happens is we become very, very disheartened. But it's important to know that this is common among families in terms of family members excluding, gaslighting, gossiping about family members that shed light on toxic family dynamics and bring up issues that the family isn't ready, willing, or able to deal with. So know that you are not alone. And this is much more common than you think. But what happens is it's rarely talked about. People don't talk about this. And even when you're looking at people's pictures, your friends' pictures on social media, their family pictures, pictures from family gatherings, birthday parties, holidays, vacations, what the pretty pictures don't tell you, right? What they don't tell you is the family dysfunction that lurks beneath the platitudes and the pictures. And so that's what you're not going to see. People post their highlights on social media, not their lowlights. And so know that you are not alone. Know that. So there's something that's important to understand that happens in all families, whether these families are thriving and healthy or whether these families are filled with so much toxicity that people really feel beaten down emotionally and mentally unwell because of the dynamics within that family. And that is a concept known as homeostasis. Homeostasis derives its meaning from the Latin language, and it simply means same status. Same status. It's that simple. And what happens is families will resort to all kinds of behaviors to maintain family homeostasis. And the more unhealthy a family is, the more that they don't want to deal with particular issues and they don't want to address behaviors that they rather sweep under the rug, the more emotionally invested they're going to be in maintaining the same status, family homeostasis. Every family has an emotional set point, so to speak, as a unit we're talking about, as a system that sets the temperature of where they fit on the continuum between healthy and unhealthy, every family. And the more unhealthy a family is, the more committed they are as a system, as a whole, to maintain the status quo. For them, change is simply too threatening for two primary reasons. Number one, it represents the unknown. It's unknown territory. It's uncharted territory. So if one person brings up this particular issue, how is it going to affect the dynamics between mom and dad? If one person brings up the affair that mom had on dad, how does this affect the children? How does it affect the system as a whole? So it represents the unknown. And number two, it forces accountability, because the minute that you put something on the table that happened and the other person acknowledges, yes, I did it, now there's an issue of responsibility and accountability. So most people don't want to admit, I mean, this is just human nature, to harming someone emotionally and creating pain in their lives, creating emotional pain in their lives. And so for two reasons, most people and most families, and particularly the more that the family is unhealthy, are going to do whatever it takes to maintain the status quo if they don't want to deal with the issue. And so let's say, for example, that one of the parents is an addict who is actively using drugs, and the other parent enables the parent who is actively using drugs. And let's say there's a teenager, there's 4 children. We're going to make up a little family. So there's 4 children in this family. And the oldest, who's a teenager, realizes that dad has an issue with drugs. You know, she's old enough to know exactly what's going on. And when she brings it to light that dad is an addict, let's say mom slaps her across the face. Don't you call your dad that? But that's really what it is. And so now this teenager is like, I don't understand what's happening. I'm telling the truth. It's good to tell the truth, but I'm being slapped in the face because I'm telling the truth. And let's take it a step further. And mom says, your dad is not an addict. He's just very stressed because he's having a difficult time at the job. But you know what you are experiencing in your home. It's like, who are you going to believe, me? Who are you going to believe? There's an old saying, who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes? And so your eyes are telling you the truth. You know what you experience in your home, but you're being punished for bringing up an issue that is impacting the family. And so now you got to go into caretaker role as the oldest sibling, and you're helping the younger children maintain this lie. And let's say because you have been slapped across the face for bringing it up, you don't want this to happen to your other 3 siblings who are younger than you. You're concerned about them. You love them. You care about them. You don't want them to have this experience. And so you send the message to them not to bring up the fact that dad is an addict. So you're all living this lie, and you're all navigating your emotional well-being and your mental well-being and even your physical well-being around this lie. And so in order to maintain the status quo, the lie that dad is not an addict, when in fact dad is an addict, you're going to have to engage in unhealthy behaviors, lying, gaslighting, so that you can maintain the status quo. And so let's dive deeper. To understand family homeostasis, family same status, think of it like a thermostat in your home, to give you a mental picture. So you got this thermostat in your home, and it is the control center for the balance. This thermostat, it is the control center for the balance that determines how warm or how cold it will be in your home. Now let's imagine, we're going to use the mother this time, that the mother in this family is narcissistic, very controlling, is constantly looking for praise, constantly looking for adoration, even at the risk of denying her kids their emotional well-being. So let's say this is what's going on in the house. This is what the family experiences, right? So let's imagine that the mother, who's very controlling, puts a locked box over the thermostat so that no one else in the family can change the setting without going through her. And let's say that it's exceptionally cold outside and the house is clearly in need of warmth. Let's say that the warmth of the thermostat represents emotional support, open communication, emotional safety, and a safe place to land. Let's say that that's what this represents. But for some reason, mom in this family sets the thermostat at 25 degrees Fahrenheit. Now that's too cold. Even if you have a blanket available to you, because it's freezing outside. It's in the dead middle of winter. It's January. And it's January in New York City, let's say, where our Januaries tend to be cold, or Chicago. And as a result, your body feels the effect of living in a cold house. Now, let's say that your mother is perfectly fine with the thermostat being at 25 degrees Fahrenheit, even though you, your siblings, and your dad is freezing. Y'all are freezing. And when you tell your mom that you are cold or that the house is freezing, your mom says, well, no, it's not freezing. It's actually quite warm in here. But if you're cold, you can get a blanket. And so the blanket represents your coping mechanisms, but that's not really the most effective coping mechanism. The most effective coping mechanism for this scenario would be to turn up the thermostat so that you can have more warmth in the house. And warmth represents support, emotional safety, open communication. Let's say that your father's freezing, dad is freezing, but he doesn't want to talk to mom about the thermostat. And you know how your mom is. If I say anything to your mom about the thermostat, I don't get dinner and I got to sleep on the couch for 2 weeks straight. So dad is freezing. It's clear because you see that dad has on pajamas, a hoodie, 2 pair of socks, his coat, and 5 blankets. Clearly, you can see that dad is freezing. And dad says, no, I'm not freezing. I'm not freezing. I'm actually comfortable. And so your mind has to wrap around the fact that I know I am freezing and I'm not crazy. And I know that my brothers and sisters are freezing. This is what we are experiencing in this house. Yet y'all are sitting here telling me it's not cold. And so you start to get in a place where you don't even trust your own reality because you're being gaslighted. Now, let's say your older brother, he's cold too, but he don't want to touch the thermostat. Because the last time he touched the thermostat, mama put him out. And so he vows to get his own place as quickly as possible, even if it means moving in with a girl he just met, who's involved in all kind of negativity, but this scenario is still better than living in that house. So he knows that he can't ask mom for the keys to the locked box because that's going to start an argument. And then mom's going to go on strike. No cooking. She's going to withdraw her love. And she's going to go into this mode where she's cold. And she's barely talking to you. She's going to stonewall you. Now, you're not calling it that because this is the norm in your house. But you all know that you got to dance around mom's narcissism. Now, you might not call it that if you don't have the language for it. But you know it's not healthy even if you can't articulate it. You might say mom's anger. And mom will say, I'm not angry. Am I raising my voice? I'm very calm. Am I yelling and screaming? But you know that she's angry. And it is a calm anger. That's the most rageful kind oftentimes. And so everyone is freezing in this house to the point where it's now creating health issues. It's creating health issues for every family member. But no one is willing to speak up about it for fear of your mother's reprisal. This is what family homeostasis looks like in an unhealthy family. Substitute the lockbox on the thermostat for alcoholism, childhood abuse, addiction, playing favorites with your children and pitting one against the other. Whatever the issue is, it still is about the lockbox, the thermostat. What is the temperature in that family of origin? And are you able to speak your truth and say, it's too cold or it's too hot? And what's the reprisal if you do? Does mom not speak to you for a week? But she pretends everything is fine. But you know she's not talking to you. She's extra loving to your siblings, slams the food down when she gives it to you, barely answers you, and is extra talkative to your siblings and is like, Lisa, Mary, and John, get dressed. We're going to wherever they're going, but they're going to a family outing. And she excludes you. Well, we'll get you next time. There wasn't enough room in the car. And you know good and well that was about reprisal. That was about paying you back for opening up your mouth about that thermostat. How dare you? How dare you tell mom it's too cold? Because now you're forcing mom to deal with an issue she don't even want to deal with. Whether she's aware or not aware of her narcissism, that we don't know. But people are aware of their behavior. You might not have the language for it, but once somebody says, it hurt me when you slapped me across the face, you know you took a hand and you slapped them. There's no denying that. You know you did that. And so what happens is, in order for a family unit to function at the temperature that is set for that household, family members must know what to expect from one another and must have predictable rules. So if the rule is, we don't challenge mom's anger here. We don't talk about dad's addiction. In fact, we pretend it's not happening. Now, you might not say that out loud, but it's an implicit rule. And you learn implicit rules when you're punished for speaking about something that makes other people uncomfortable. Even if nobody will outright say it to you, you know what you're experiencing. And so what may happen is when a family member breaks a rule, the rest of the family may gang up on the individual who initiated the change. And so summed up in the message is, you trying to mess with the thermostat. Don't you touch this lock box. And if you do, it's going to be hell to pay. Whether the hell is emotional, or whether the hell is physical, or whether the hell is financial. But there will be hell to pay. And so I say this to say, April, so that you don't feel like you were going crazy, because most families that have a high degree of toxic interactions with one another don't admit to that. And so if you are the healthiest person in your family, you don't really fit with that system. This is hard. I really wish I didn't have to tell you this. This is a hard pill to swallow. And it brings me of the story. It reminds me of the story in the Bible of Joseph and his brothers. And Joseph had his father's favor. His father made him a coat of many colors. And Joseph had a dream. And he shared this dream with his brothers. And so essentially, it really is not about what the dream was about, but it was about whenever you don't fit the limits and the labels that family members have placed on you, the defined role that they feel you're supposed to stay in, and you begin to come out of that role, you begin to break out of those limits, it upsets homeostasis. It upsets the status quo. So it's basically like, who is Joseph to think that he could dream a bigger dream for himself? Who does he think he is? That's the gist of it. And as a result, they had envy towards him and they threw him in a pit. Now, the story ends with Joseph becoming the prime minister of Egypt. And that's decades later. At the time that the story first happens, when his brothers throw him in a pit, he's around 17. And it's about 25, 30 years later, he has a series of difficult trials that he goes through, and he ends up becoming victorious. But he was thrown in the pit by his own brothers. And so a lot of times when we challenge the narrowly defined roles that family members have placed us in, maybe you are an entrepreneur, maybe you are you're in ministry, and you are challenging the family role. So a lot of times families will throw you in a pit. Not a literal pit necessarily, because we know that the Bible uses allegory as well, right? And Jesus taught in parables. So it may not be a literal physical pit, but it could be a pit of denial. You thrown into a pit of denial. Like, I know that dad was an addict, but you gonna tell me he's working hard. I know, I saw the drugs. So let's say that that's your story. And now you're thrown into this pit of denial. And you're also thrown into the pit of primary caretaker for your siblings, because you remember what it was like to get slapped across the face for acknowledging the reality of your household, acknowledging the reality, right? But you don't want, you're protective. You love your siblings. You don't want them to go through that. So now y'all are all in this pit of denial. Families will put you in a pit of exclusion. They won't invite you to stuff. That's a pit, so to speak, metaphorically. Family will throw you in a pit of envy when you begin to do the things that you love. Not every family, we're talking about unhealthy families. We want to be real clear. So if you come from a family where it's healthy, you're thriving, communication is open, people respect people's boundaries, then this video was clearly not for you. But for those who are struggling, then this may shed some light on why this is happening. And so, a couple of things that you might find helpful if you're in this situation, because this is going to be hard. But the reality is, you cannot change people. You can't. You can ask them, but it's their choice. People have free will, and a person has to be willing and ready to change. They have to be in that emotional space, or at least willing to do the work to get there. There are some families where one person goes into therapy and the family members who are unhealthy are not willing to go into therapy, and will actually exclude the person for going into therapy, because you're bringing the family's issues to light. You're showing the truth of where that thermostat is placed. You need to know this going in so that you're going in with your eyes open. So a couple of things to keep in mind. Number one, if you come from a family where you're feeling like, you're being excluded, you're being gaslighted, heavily criticized because you are speaking your truth of what you experienced. And when you're around your family, it's toxic, right? Couple of things to keep in mind that you might find helpful. There's no perfect scenario, and there is no magic pill that you can swallow. So if you're looking for that from this video, you're not going to get it. But what you can do to at least begin to care for yourself, to put some self-care strategies in place for yourself, knowing that this is your situation, there's a couple of things that you might find helpful. Number one, invest in genuine relationships. If you can't get the support you need from your family, invest in genuine relationships. This is important. Everybody that you're related to is not family. I believe that there's a difference between relatives and family. And so there are people who are related to you by blood, but that doesn't mean that you have a family bond. And there are people who are no relation to you that may in fact be your family. And so make sure that you're distinguishing between relatives and family. Yeah, I'm related to you, but clearly if you slept with my husband, or you tried to take, you stole from me, or you tried to turn my kids against me, then clearly you're in a place where you are not behaving like family. We're relatives, we're related by blood, but you don't have my best interest in mind. So you want to invest in genuine relationships and be open to people from all backgrounds and all ages. So often we narrow our support because we think a friend has to be exactly like us. And that's not true. That's not true. You can have different friends for different reasons. So let's say you might be 25 years old and never think that you could be friends with somebody 60. And you may limit your friends to having to be your age. But there might be somebody who's 60 who feels like they're alone. And the more you talk, you may find that you do have some things in common. Now, you may not listen to the same music, right? They have music from their era. You have music from your era. But you may find that you both have a passion for creative writing. And so you would build your friendship around that. That's the starting point, and then it can blossom from there. But that's your common connector. And from there, you cultivate a friendship. But when we limit ourselves that our friend has to look a certain way, be of a certain culture, be of a certain age, you limit yourself from a source of support. One of the things I love about Pastor Charles Stanley, who I believe is in his 80s now, is he was sharing on one of his programs how he has friends who are a lot younger than him, that most of his friends have died off. And so he has friends from a variety of generations, friends as young as in their 30s, that's young for him. Friends who are young as in their 20s, and they invite him bowling and he goes. Now, he might not stay all night, you know what I mean? But the point is, he does things that keep his spirit young and that allow him to thrive mentally and emotionally. And so don't think that your friends have to be your age. And if you're an older person listening to this video, maybe you're 70, don't think your friends have to be 70. There might be somebody 18, 19 in need of mentoring. And it can start from there. And then you might find that there are commonalities. And you may not listen to the same music. And you may not do all the same things together. But that's where diversity can be appreciated. And you can have different friends to do different things with. 2, if you need to work through some issues, seek therapy. That's the best thing you could do, is seek therapy or a support group, because dealing with toxic family members is difficult. And getting a support system to help you work through this challenge can be very beneficial. Working with a therapist in your area can help you develop practical coping skills and self-care, sustainable self-care strategies. A therapist can help you learn to can help you better understand. Let me say it this way. Can help you better understand why you do the things you do, why your family does the things that they do. A therapist could help you to process the difficult, unpleasant emotions that come from having to navigate your family's dynamics. A therapist can help you learn the signs of a toxic family situation and to come up with some strategies to navigate that. They can guide you in coming up with ways to set boundaries and teach you to be proactive about maintaining your mental health, even though you're in a difficult situation. And so these are some of the things that you can do, and some of the benefits of therapy. Or if you don't find an individual therapist, maybe there's a support group in your area, in your city and your area. 3, recognize when toxic behavior is taking place and set boundaries. You hear me say this a lot in terms of setting boundaries. And setting boundaries doesn't mean you have to argue with a person to go back and forth. And so let's say that you know that you are being gaslighted. A toxic behavior is being taken place. You bring up an issue. You're being gaslighted. You don't have to argue and go back and forth, let's say with your older brother, and say, no, I know for a fact this happened and you're a liar. And that all may be true. But you can speak your piece and set your boundary. And so it may sound something like this. Regardless of what you say to me, you and I both know that this is what happened. And that is my stance. And that's how I feel about it. And that's it. And so whatever they say after that, And what I'm talking about is whatever they say to gaslight you. Now, if they are accepting responsibility, open to a dialogue, that's a different discussion. But if they are gaslighting you, then it is not your responsibility to argue with a gaslighter. You've already spoke your piece, and then you set some boundaries, whatever that boundary is going to be. Next, instead of internalizing a family member's toxic behavior, look at the source. And so often when a person is behaving in a toxic manner, we internalize it, meaning, what's wrong with me? Am I inadequate because mom never loved me or dad walked out on me? When maybe the issue is that parent was narcissistic, or that parent was actively using drugs and they parented you from the place of drug addiction. So you got to look at the source. A lot of times we'll internalize a behavior from a family member, and as a result, we'll live from this place of shame, when in reality, it is their issue. So try not to internalize it. Instead, look at the source. Where is this coming from? When I say the source, where is this coming from, right? So the Bible lets us know that you will know people by their fruit. In the book of Matthew, it says you will know them by their fruit. And so fruit is what you produce. And so if a parent is producing the fruit of anger, that's what it is, right? The fruit of rage, that's what it is. And so this comes from Matthew chapter 7, verses 16 through 20. You can read the whole thing. I'm sorry, verses 15 through 20. Matthew chapter 7, verses 15 through 20, but I only want to focus on verse 16. Matthew 7:16. You will know them by their fruit. Do men gather grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Fruit is what we produce. This is why when you purchase fruit in a supermarket, you have to go to the produce aisle. Fruit has seeds. And so when a person is producing the behavior of anger, when a person is producing the behavior of violence, when a person is producing the fruit of envy, that's what it is, even if they're related to you. And so instead of internalizing it and saying, because let's say, for example, your sister's envious of you for whatever reason, your marriage, your relationship with your kids, envious of your joy, you know the situation. But let's say there's a particular thing, and you're both adults, you're both in your 30s, and your sister's envious of you, and she's showing you the fruit of envy. She's one-upping you. She's being competitive with you to the point where it is unhealthy. She puts down your accomplishments anytime that you accomplish something, and you're not even coming and telling her. It could be that you put the accomplishment up on Facebook, and she says, oh, I saw your Facebook post yesterday about your raise. Who does that? When in reality, you weren't telling it to her. You weren't having a discussion, and it's really none of her business because you're not talking to her. But you already can see that this is the fruit of envy. That's what it is. So instead of internalizing it and saying, well, maybe I'm a bad person because I have a good relationship with my kids. See, gaslighting will do that to your mind. Gaslighting will have you feeling guilty for some ish that somebody else does to you. Yes, I said ish. I didn't say the curse. But gaslighting will have you believe, that you are going crazy for acknowledging the reality of your experiences. Next, invest in things that bring you joy, that don't rely on your family. So if you're relying on your family to bring you joy, you might be disappointed if you're in a toxic family. So if you tend to have a family member that excludes you from important family events, start investing in things that bring you joy. Create new traditions. Create new traditions for yourself. And don't rely on your family for those things. It hurts. I can't take that away from you. It hurts. But the thing is, how can you force people to behave the way you want them to behave? You can't. How can you force people to acknowledge whatever it is that you want them to acknowledge? How can you force that? So the only person you can control in any dynamic is yourself. And what happens is the more that you start to build your own resilience, and you start to build yourself up mentally, what happens over time, this doesn't happen overnight, is that you become so mentally fortified, so spiritually fortified, especially for the believer, if you are putting on the whole armor of God, as noted in Ephesians. You become so spiritually fortified that even when family members say things to you as an adult, It doesn't penetrate in the way that it used to because you know who you are. And so you can have a family member that says, you are so ugly and that's why nobody wants to marry you. And maybe the old you would have internalized that, and you would have ruminated on it for days and days and days, and it would have got you down. But let's say if you understand who you are in God and you're like, well, God says that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. That's what the Bible says. It says you're fearfully and wonderfully made, and marvelous are thy works. And so if that's what the book of Psalms says about me in the Bible, right, that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made and marvelous are thy works, right, then what this family member is saying about me is not true. Psalm 131, 14, Psalm 131, 14 lets you know that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, and marvelous are thy works, and this my soul knows well. It actually says, I'm going to give you the New King James Version. It says, I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. And so when you know that you're fearfully and wonderfully made, and that starts with praising God. It says, I will praise you. And so when you're in a place where you're praising God, right, and you're like, God, I thank you for making me. I thank you for being who you are. And when you read this at first glance, you will say, wow, that sounds a little conceited. David is praising God for making him. David knows who he is in God. It's not conceited. He's saying, God, all that you are, you thought enough of me to want to make me in your image and likeness, right? The book of Genesis says that God made mankind in his image and likeness. So you thought so much of mankind, of what you wanted us to be, that you made me to reflect your image and likeness. This makes me fearfully and wonderfully made. Oh my goodness. Thank you, Lord. Thank you for all of who you are. Thank you for everything that you've done. Thank you for being a loving, wonderful Father. And thank you for making me. You take on a brand new perspective because you don't have confidence. You now have Godfidence. Substitute the C for the G. But then it goes on to say, wonderful or marvelous are your works, right? We're reading from the New King James Version. Marvelous are your works, and this my soul knows well. Now, I don't want to make the video too long, but I'm just going to quickly say, where it says, and this my soul knows well, this is key, because the soul is the mind, the will, and the emotions. And so essentially what David is saying is, mentally, I know that I'm fearfully and emotionally made. I get it mentally. Because my soul, that's the mind, the will, the emotions, and the personality. So he's saying, okay, mentally, I get it. I finally am coming into the realization, the understanding mentally that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. But not only that, emotionally, because the soul is the mind, the will, the emotions. Emotionally, I know that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made because my soul knows this well. So that means that even if other people try to run up in my life and make me feel less than, inadequate, stupid, and deficit, I can't even take that on. I can't even receive that because your word tells me I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, and my soul knows this well. I get it mentally. I get it emotionally. There's a third part, the will. The will is the epicenter of my choices. So that also means I'm going to choose choices that align with the fact that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Oh, no, sirree, Bob, you ain't going to run up in my life and make me think that I'm less than because you don't want to deal with something. I got to keep on keeping on. I got to live with purpose. That's what I got to do. I can't worry about you. And so that verse has been very helpful for me when I need to remind myself of who I am in God, regardless of what other people try to do. And I hope it's helpful for you. And so with that being said, you remember who you are in God, because you might come from a family that's not like Leave It to Beaver. You might come from a family that is filled with gossip, criticism, gaslighting, even abuse. You might come from that type of family. But you remember that you're fearfully and wonderfully made, and marvelous are thy works, and you're included. You're something to be marveled at. And so that means that when people see you in your purpose, they should be marveled. When people see how you survive that, that's marvelous. When people see that you are able to keep on keeping on, regardless of what you've been through, that's a marvelous thing. That's something to marvel at. There's some people that didn't have the inner strength and the inner resolve that you have. That's something to marvel at. When you are walking in your purpose, using your gifts and your talents, even though people try to keep you down, but you won't let nothing keep you down. You're like, you know what? I'm going to be about my purpose. I'm going to focus on my gifts and my talents. I can't change the past, but I can certainly walk into the hope and the future that God has for me. That's something to be marveled at. That's when you coming into the realization that you're fearfully and wonderfully made, regardless of what anyone tries to make you believe. Let your soul know that well today. Let your soul know that well. So with that being said, 3 quick announcements. Number 1, don't forget to like the video, like. Subscribe to the channel if you find the info helpful, and share it on your social networks. Share it on all of your networks, because people need to hear these messages, because these are things that are often not talked about. These are things that are often swept under the rug. 2, if you would like to support the ministry and the channel, you can do so by going to CassandраMack Ministries. You'll see a tab that says Give an Offering if you would like to give a love offering. There's also a Cash App. My Cash App is the # TheCassandraMack. The # TheCassandraMack for Cash App. And 3, there's also wonderful products. If you look under the video, you'll see from Teespring that we have inspirational t-shirts, mugs, leggings. So there are lots of inspirational products. I wear a lot of the t-shirts that I have on Teespring to just kind of remind myself, to keep on keeping on. And lastly, we have an event coming up the last Saturday of September 26, 2020. It's my annual Grab a Girlfriend and Go Take Your Life Back walk. This year, though, instead of it being a physical gathering, it is going to be a guided virtual walk. So it's going to be streamed on Instagram Live. So make sure you're following me on Instagram at TheCassandraMack. And on the day of the walk, Saturday, September 26, 2020, you will see it go live stream. And you can choose your walking route from your city or state. So you can walk to a municipal building, your favorite coffee shop, a beauty salon, a hiking trail. You can walk at home in place on a treadmill. You can just go to your backyard or go to a friend's house. It's totally up to you where you decide to walk. But it's about women coming together in faith, fun, fitness, fellowship, sisterhood, to begin to take back some of the things that might have been taken from us this year. And I'm talking about the internal things like our joy, our hope, our goals. So we're going to have an amazing time together at this walk. We're going to have an amazing morning together. And I would love for you to be a part of it. We have so many women and men. Women are bringing their spouses. Some women are bringing their brothers. Men are like, can we attend? It's geared for women, but men are welcome. We definitely welcome you with open arms if you want to attend. And yeah, so that's it. For more information about the walk, you can go to grabagirlfriendandgo.com. So always remember that you hold the pen that writes the chapters of your life. And as iron sharpens iron, be that iron today that sharpens somebody else's life. Take care.